focus standard for today's lesson comes from Grade 7, Statistics and Probability, Standard 1. Understand that statistics gains information about a population by examining a sample. Our topic today comes from our new unit, Data and Statistics, Sample versus Population. Our essential question is, how do we distinguish between samples and populations in data sets and related statistical reports? Please take a moment pausing the video if you need to copy down the topic and essential question into your header along with today's date, set your question column and your note column, and resume the video when you're ready to begin. So as you may have gathered from our introduction so far to data and statistics, statistics is the analysis of a collected data sample to make inferences about the population it represents. So that is the purpose of this branch of mathematics. So we collect data on a small sample, and we use that data to make inferences, or another word for that is to make conclusions or hypotheses or other decision making about the population at large that sample represents. So here's one visual way to think about it. Okay, so we start with the population. The population accounts for the total group, everything that could be included in whatever group is wanting to be studied, and it is always larger than the sample. So the population accounts for every piece of data that could be included in the group that we are wanting to study. And the sample is a small section of that. That's why we used a smaller circle inside of this larger blue circle. So the sample is a small part of the total group, and it must be representative of the larger population. We'll talk more in the following videos about what qualifies as a representative group, but in general, the sample is just a small part of that total group. This is for ease. Usually the population is very, very large, so we'll look at some examples, but it could be worldwide population, and we want to find something out about all people across the world. Well, it would be impossible to analyze data from every single person around the world, and so we have to find a way to select just a small part that would represent this larger group that we want to study. It's easier then to collect and analyze data on a small group and then apply that, make inferences about the larger population. So what I'd like to do is examine 3 questions and about some samples and populations so that we can determine what is the sample and what is the population. So let's go ahead and dive into our first example. Portland Public School District is considering a year-round school year. As part of the decision-making process, they surveyed 1,000 families from all over the district to determine how families felt about the possible change. So, in this situation, what would be the sample and what would be the population that they're trying to study? Well, it's Portland Public School District, and they surveyed 1,000 families. Well, surveys are how we collect data. So these 1,000 families that were surveyed must be our sample. If the 1,000 families surveyed is our sample, what do they represent? What is the larger population that these 1,000 families represent? That's right? We're talking about families within the Portland Public School Districts. They want to know how families feel about this possibility of a year-round school year. So all of the families that are in the Portland Public School District would be the population. Let's take a look at our second example. Researchers were interested in determining which social media platform teenagers in the United States preferred to use. So they polled 25,000 13 to 17-year-olds across the nation. Go ahead and think about this information here. Which part represents the sample, the small data set, and which part represent what would be the population, the large total group that they're trying to study. Well, if you said that the 25,000 13 to 17-year-olds in the poll, this right here, polls are another way to collect data, right? That's another way of saying surveyed. So they surveyed or polled 25,000 13 to 17-year-olds across the nation. So that's the sample. That's the small group that they decided to study. And so what is the larger population, the total population that they're trying to figure out? Yeah, that's right. All teenagers, 13 to 17-year-olds that live within the United States, right? They were interested in determining which social media platform teenagers in the United States preferred. So you might have also just said teenagers in the United States. And more specifically, since they surveyed and polled 13 to 17-year-olds, that is the parameters of how they're defining a teenager. So the 25,000 13 to 17-year-olds that were polled would be our sample, and all teenagers that fall within that age range that live in the United States would be our population. Let's go ahead and do one more example. For our third and final example, we're looking at the 15 million Netflix subscribers around the world that were surveyed regarding how many hours of content they watched each week. Analyze this more closely to see if you can determine which is the sample and which is the population. That's right. How'd you do? Well, since they surveyed 15 million of their subscribers from around the world, that 15 million would be the sample. The 15 million is meant to represent all Netflix subscribers in the world, which, as a side note, if you are interested, I looked it up to see, and at this point in time, as of January 2019, there were approximately 139 million paying subscribers to Netflix around the world. So 15 million would be considered a small data set within that larger 139 million paying subscribers. So that's going to conclude our video today on samples versus populations. Please make sure that your notes are complete and come ready to do more statistical analysis in class.